Everyone. So excited about our guest today. We have the wonderful Shadeen Francis here with us. I got a chance to speak with Shadeen before this conversation, and I loved it. And I know you will too. She is a marriage and family therapist, a relationship expert, and a board certified sex therapist. So, welcome to the show, Shadeen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be here.
We are going to dive into the topic on desire. Kind of a
Yes.
broad concept, isn't it?
Yeah, I love when we get to talk desire. I think when people hear sex therapist, immediately we want to zoom right in, and plainly that is also what people tend to do with sex. But I love talking about desire because it's this really juicy entry point, and so many of the conversations that I have with people, the nature of how they move through the world, not just their sexual relationships, but their relationship to other elements in the world, change when we slow down to pay attention to desire.
Mm, yes. So that's the whole like conceptualizing it away from sexuality is so empowering, right?
Mhm.
Because it can be, I find it sometimes in working with couples, the idea of desire can feel challenging. It's like we're supposed to know what our desire is and when we have it and activate it, and it can be anxiety producing to talk about desire. Do you find that as a relationship expert?
Yeah, when I'm working with folks, if I say the word desire, immediately folks think that I'm talking about a precursor to sex,
Yeah.
which I understand based on usually the context under which I'm meeting with folks. But the relationship between desire and sex is complex and is usually pretty oversimplified. While sexual desire is a kind of desire, desire is so much bigger than that. And so when I'm talking about desire, what I'm talking about is embodied wanting,
Mm,
the felt sense of wanting. What does it mean to want in an experience that is palpable, that is tangible, that is describable, that is, I mean, I am a researcher in origin, so measurable, right? It is this way of being where you own and claim, I want. And it's a
mm.
really powerful place to be.
The own, I'm gonna just hold that for a second.
Mm.
Own and claim I want. It really does require an embodiment and attunement. That's not always easy to find, is it? It's not always as obvious to answer what we want.
Folks are often distracted by who is allowed to want,
Mm,
what I am allowed to want. Do I believe I can have what I want? And how much do I want it? And all of this is happening at the same time as messages around, do I believe, I said this a little bit, but do I believe it's possible? Can I have what I want?
mm,
And those are societal messages coming in, external messages coming in. But we're also kind of wired that way. We have a brain that does this really lovely negativity bias, right? Some of the data ranges from 10 times to 100 times more salient negative information is than positive information. And we are wired to move away from anything that could bring us harm rather than pursuing the things that could bring us pleasure. And so we do all of this shielding, guarding, distancing, suppressing, renaming, reframing desire. And then when it comes time to actually act, we have this big gap around, did I even want this? This isn't what I wanted. Who wants that? Right? And it's really disheartening for people to play in this space without support.
oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Like to turn down, especially in today's environment, I
Mm.
imagine, in the modern environment, to turn down the sense of constant seeking of the negative or threat in order
Mm-hmm.
to have space to tune in to the positive creation of desire is a challenge. What do you find as some of the most challenging aspects of that in your work?
Yeah, I feel inclined to respond. The way my brain works moves in multiple directions. So you started to talk about modern life. And so there's a whole part of my brain that's like, ooh, let's talk about technology and marketing and all of that. So we might circle back to that in a moment.
Okay.
But the place that feels honest to start with is that desire in its most honest form is the yes. We do all this prioritizing of the no, and I constantly invite people into the yes. Almost annoyingly so. My clients and I can have a good laugh about it. Right? And I'll say, well, what do you want? And they'll say all sorts of stuff. And I'll say, great. So what do you want?
What I don't want is I can imagine answering that
Mm-hmm.
question. Like, what do you want? Well, I want to not feel, and I don't want. It'd be really easy to start with the no's, right?
Absolutely. And it's normal to speak that way. So let's play this game. And anyone listening has done this themselves or has been in this conversation 900 times. Right? And what do you want to eat for dinner? Let's go
Hmm.
out. What do you want for dinner?
That's so funny as you should say that. So I'm I'm hitting on different like I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking about we're going out, right? So I'm
Sure.
thinking about different places, and there is a lot of what I don't want coming to my
Sure.
mind.
Yeah. Do
I
you want to
don't.
vocalize any of it?
Yes, I don't want plain American food tonight.
Okay.
I don't want Mexican food, which is very different for me. But I can feel it. It's the don'ts.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
then
they
what
come up first.
they do.
And they come up fast.
Uh,
So now let's say that that was really hard for me to ask you. And I'm really invested in sharing an experience with you. And I'm nervous about this exchange, or we're just getting to know each other. And so you respond to me with a long pause that means you're taking this question seriously and reflecting, but I'm sitting here in all my anxious nervousness, filling that space with whatever stories I fill it with. And then all you have to offer me is what you don't want.
yes.
Right? When we haven't actually built anything. Sure, it helps narrow down the pool a little bit, but we actually haven't created anything with all the effort that we've just used. We've actually used all of our creative energy to say no.
Oh, how funny. You know what? And I also, let me drop one step even deeper.
Mm,
My first instinct actually would have been, I don't know, what do you want? My
beautiful.
first instinct actually would
Love that.
not have been to take the risk to say, I don't want these things, because my anxiety would be, but what if you were really counting on that?
Mm-hmm.
So that would
Look
be
at
my first
that.
instinct would be to shift it to you and
And
then
that
to
is a
go, no.
perfect example of how
Yeah.
it also happens,
Yeah.
right? What do you want?
What do you
Right?
want?
I'm trying to build intimacy and connection to you, and you are reflecting it back to me. And what that means in our dynamic is I am responsible for our shared experience,
Mm.
right? You are meaning to be collaborative and amenable. You are interested in what I also want, but I'm trying to make a bridge and pursue your desires. I want to facilitate an experience maybe around you or initiate our experience by ensuring your pleasure. And it's reflected back to me as I am responsible. Or you might have just stopped with the first sentence of that, which is, I don't know. I don't know.
Mhm. I don't know. And
Hmm,
then
I
again,
don't
that
know.
is I'm not gonna own any of that. I'm just gonna I don't know it, and it really does land back in your experience, and I bet all of us out there listening have been on either side of that equation, right?
Yeah.
Where when somebody says, "I don't know," it's not actually a feeling of joy that we share. It's a little like, "Oh god, now this is gonna be a pain in the ass or a burden."
And we have moved very um, not far at all. We haven't moved very far at all, right? To go from here's this big wide world that is full of possibility and purpose and pleasure. And now we have narrowed it down to not American food and not Mexican food. So, how about Thai? How about Japanese? How about Laotian food? How about Jamaican food? How about Trini food? How about, right, like, how about seafood? Like, depending on what part of America you're in, like, classic American food looks different, right? Are
Yeah.
we going for hoagies? Or are we going for a turkey leg? You know, that we need to be in it in a different way. And that's not to shame or guilt any of us for coming into conversations that way. We are often overwhelmed. We are often following all these other social cues around being amenable and polite and easygoing and laid back. We might be navigating insecurities or uncertainty. But what I find for most people in that exchange who don't meet kind of the request of what do you want, it's because they're starting from a place of disembodiment. We spend so much time out of body. Desire is embodied wanting. So, of course, you don't know more about what you want when you're floating off in the ether. You're in your to do list for the next 48 hours. You're reflecting on a meeting that you had 2 hours ago. You're just trying to like hold everything down because the state of the world is just feeling like too much.
Right.
Right? What do you want for dinner? Right? I haven't been in my body in 6 hours. I don't even know what I'm doing right now, let alone
Yes.
have active desires and experience a claiming of this body and its right to have good things. We don't walk through the world in that way. And so my work, while it can feel overly simplistic if I just say like I love to talk with people about desire and fantasy, that can feel really frivolous, but for me the impetus, the heart place that it's coming from is I want people in their bodies. I want people to have a felt sense, a claiming of this is my body, this is my life, and I deserve to feel good in it.
And to take the moment, it's just the rich conversation about what do you want for dinner? Just these few minutes that we spent talking about it. If I join you in a disembodied way or avoid you in a disembodied way, we're missing that connection. We're missing so
Mm-hmm.
much in the present moment together.
Yeah. And we could end up somewhere that is good, that is very good, but I miss out on the experience that I actually want, and which is I want to sit next to you and watch your face as you bite into the exact right thing. You know, that almost orgasmic feeling of like, oh yeah, that was good. I want to share that moment with you.
Mm.
And we are likely not going to get there if you just come to the place that I want to go. I mean, you might, because I'm very good at picking restaurants. However, however,
But then I would be having like you could but me sharing, even if I say any like I don't have to pick the restaurant, right? Like you're good at picking the restaurant, right? So what we're doing is negotiating a space together, but it's an embodied space. So if I say, Shadeen, what I'm wanting is something really fresh and um, spicy,
yes,
right? So if I'm saying that because I've slowed down and I'm not just like, okay, whatever you want, let's just go. The intimacy starts with a question, and then now we're together. So now when you pick a
yes,
restaurant, you're going to be really good at it, and I trust it. I can't wait.
yeah,
Maybe we're at
and
Psychotherapy Network, or you can take
yeah.
me.
I mean, probably, maybe I'll say, let's go for Vietnamese food,
Yeah.
right? Fresh and spicy. Right. And whether or not that is the right thing specifically, and I love how you did this because this is the exact invitation that I give to folks when the desire isn't a concrete material thing. I think we tend to go object.
Mhm.
Embodied wanting, I invite people to tap into your senses. The data is there, even if the language isn't, even if the fully formed picture is. What do you want? So maybe it is a flavor profile. Maybe it's a color. I want something vibrant. I want it to be colorful, like greens and reds, right? I want something cold, right? I want something crunchy. It can be a texture. I want something that looks beautiful or that looks familiar,
Mhm.
right? I don't want anything like sort of fancy and avant-garde. I want something that looks like what it is. Or if you're my spouse, I don't want it to look if it's a fish, I don't want to see its eyes. That we can get whatever level of clarity that we have, and we can tune into our senses and allow that to be really granular if it is, or really broad if it is. But we have to tune in. So, what information can you get from your eyes, from your ears, from your nose, from your mouth, from your skin, from your sense of balance, from your awareness of your body and space? All of those things come together to give us information about wanting, an embodied sense of wanting. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
So much so. It really, and it's highlighting that the tuning into the senses, how connecting that is.
Mm.
It is not only the self-focused experience, because as you're awakening me to like to the thought of um, the different experiences I might want, I'm also now attuning to my day in a different way, right? Like when you said, I want something simple, I can imagine if I've had a stressful day, the calling into my body might be I'm tuning in to the kind of stress I've had. And, so I might still answer that question, but in an embodied way to say, I think I want to be surprised.
Mm.
I think I've held so much. I think I just want to go someplace where I can be in a simple place. So I might
Mhm.
not actually know what food I want, but now I've still embodied my desire to connect with you in that. Does that?
Yeah, absolutely. And we can continue to collaborate,
Okay.
right? And so, even if it's, I don't know exactly, but here's what I do know. Here's what I
Yeah.
do know. I know that you're still in this with me. You're still in this with me. And I want us to not miss. I mean, there's a part of me that is a brain nerd. That was the sort of research that I liked to do. And this is a dopamine system, right? Desire is a dopaminergic system, it's a reward loop. And I
Mm.
like to remind people of that because it feels effortful. Right? It's more work. It is more, I am asking you to do more work, right? Folks are like, that sounds hard. And I said, yeah. Yup. It is effort. It is effort. And it is a system that, yes, comes to motivate itself, um, but still requires you to put something in. But again, it is a reward system. There is part of you that will feel the release, the benefits. This isn't just some sort of frivolous out there thing. You feel rewarded by taking up this kind of space. That's the reminder I have to give folks often, that is regularly gendered, but not always. The reminder that this level of self focus, this level of selfishness is rewarding
Mm.
and does not come at someone else's expense. This is also intimacy. I am letting you into my inner world such that you participating in my wants honestly, right? You're not crossing your boundaries or overextending or doing anything that you do not also want to do. Us participating in this embodied state with each other is a deeply rewarding experience of intimacy that a lot of people are missing without even really noticing it. They feel the difference, but they can't quite. When people are talking about passion, right, everyone thinks it's spark. Right. And I remind people, no, you just have to be in your body in the present moment. And that's
But
really hard to do if you don't start there.
so often when people are trying to find their passion for a career or something, it it is. experience with so many external resources rather than the internal, as if I go find it, then I will have my passion. And what I hear you saying is that the embodiment of desire is at the core, that the
Yes.
embodiment of tuning in. And I love that you had that brainy spin of the dopamine, because it is harder work, but so is everything that is more rewarding and
Mm-hmm.
connecting. If I go, well, whatever you want to, then I haven't owned my own emotional weight in our relationship in this decision, because I'm not going to hold myself responsible for going in.
Yeah.
And wow, I could really see that as opposed to being selfless, it is really leaving the weight on you rather than the joy you will feel when I really tune in and light up, and it happens to overlap with something that lights you up, right? Maybe we don't agree on Vietnamese, but we go to Thai. Whatever that is, it's this shared experience.
Yes. I can be a little bit of a sass. That's what makes the work fun, I think.
Okay.
And so I sometimes will say to people, because we have these strong moral compasses, these values that we pick up and that we're taught and are preached to us. And a lot of folks are really interested in not being selfish. And you use the word selfless, and it actually does come up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually a confusion of like generosity with like martyrdom, but this like sense of selflessness. And I just sort of get curious with folks around, so how do you think that you will have more enjoyment if you are less of yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes tunes some light bulbs on for folks,
So
right?
true.
We want you to have more of yourself here, more present, more self, not selfless or less self. And this is different than just orienting around liking. The Again, the brain nerd part of me feels compelled to name that these are different systems, liking and wanting. Those happen kind of differently in the brain.
Say more.
We can often want things that we don't end up liking. Just to make it really simple. Like just because you want it doesn't guarantee there's pleasure on the other end.
That's so true.
So I want to be clear that I'm not promising that if you follow this pathway, your life is going to be the best thing you've ever experienced ever. But certainly you're going to be more in control of the experiences that you have by being in pursuit of a life that is yours rather than responding to whatever life is given to you.
Mm-hmm. Say more about the different pathways of wanting
Mm-hmm.
and desire and liking.
Yeah.
Wanting and liking, wanting and say more.
Yeah, so there is some overlap, but they kind of get described differently. So at its purest, our sense of wanting is a dopamine system that can operate differently or separately, we might say, from actual pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
right? Liking is pleasure bound, right? It requires pleasure at the center of it. So even though there's still the release of dopamine, we tend to trace the same kind of pathways that we do with like opioids in the
Mm.
research, right? It's a good sort of contrast. That there's different regions of the brain that lights up, and we can recognize that we can also like things that are not good for us, and we can also like things we don't want.
Yes.
Right. And so I just teasing out again, it's kind of in the nuance, but I just don't want us to talk about them as if they are the same thing. We've got wanting as being this embodied reach, pull, motivation, longing. We've got liking, which is a form of pleasure, like a consummation of pleasure, enjoyment in the moment that can be separate from what you wanted. Right? I didn't want this, but I like it. right? And maybe I like it and I still don't want it.
How do you, if we were to bring that into, and I don't want to rush the process of
Yeah,
bringing it
let's
into
do it.
sexuality, but how do you, let's bring it into sexuality and
Mm-hmm.
sexual desire.
Yeah.
And so often that is, we can want something and then at least we believe we want it. We feel that sense of excitement, that urge, that dopamine rush. And yet then we start to experience it and the wanting isn't there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. So in that example, you're saying as you get into it, the wanting isn't there, or help me tease that out so I can
Yeah,
answer
let's say if
clearly.
I think about, sometimes I would imagine
Mm-hmm.
that finding an embodied wanting, right, is probably very different than a reactive wanting, right? Like if I have an embodied wanting for somebody versus maybe an identity wanting. I want this person because if I'm able to have this person, I have this belief of what it will mean for me, or I don't want this person for this belief of what it
Mm-hmm.
could mean about me, right? There's all sorts of these different elements. And then yet finding the embodiment in that
Mm-hmm.
is probably not always an easy step.
Yeah. I love that you have asked this, one, because it allows us to get into more nuance, and two, it allows me to tell on myself a
Okay.
little bit. I am actually incredibly permissive around some of this in ways that maybe other folks are not.
Hmm.
My only objective in this piece of the conversation, around this piece around desire, is for folks to own their wanting. So I actually am not deeply invested in why you want it. Right? I'm not interested in policing that unless it's something that is bringing you harm, or doesn't honor another person's consent. Right? But if I want to be sexual with you because I want to have a good night's sleep tonight and this is going to knock me out, cool. If
Right.
I want to have sex with you because I want to fulfill my image of what a good partner looks like, cool. If I want to have sex because I'm aroused and so my body is craving touch, cool. But I want folks to be in their body enough to claim a wanting. And I am open to folks taking a little time in that and being open to exploring as a means of getting clear on what I want. So I'm in the middle of washing dishes. I just finished researching for 2 hours. I saw 4 clients today. And, now there's an invitation to be sexual with my partner. And I haven't been in my body in that way all day. But I'm open. I'm curious.
Hmm.
I don't know that I want anything in particular in this moment, um, but I have a willingness to explore. I have a curiosity, and I'm paying attention to what I want, and I'm not just entering that experience because my partner wants it. And so it'd be good for my partner, and sure, that would be a lovely, selfless thing to do. I'm not invested in being selfless, right? I want to find my own wanting. And so maybe I invite us to begin with something that leaves enough room for me to get me back into my body. So maybe I don't agree to the whole kit and caboodle,
Hmm.
but maybe I know for myself that, oh, maybe a good makeout would let me know if there's anything more here.
Right.
Maybe let's just sit side by side and like take a breath.
Hmm.
Or actually, no, let me not be here with you because I'm going to be distracted by you and your energy. Let me like go take a shower, right? Touch my body, feel the water run over my skin, lotion, and then we'll see. And that level of Negotiation, communication, conversation can also be sexy, playful, tender, especially if we already know that we are trying to do this with each other. And folks are often worried about their partners feeling like rejected by that. But what I've seen time and time again, that when we talk this through, partners inevitably want, or I should say invariably want, to be having sexual experiences with someone who wants to have sex with them.
Right.
And they are willing to wait the 3 minutes, the 30 minutes, the 3 hours for you to be sure that if I'm saying yes, it is an embodied yes, I want this with you.
I love that, because part of what I'm hearing in that is that the essential element is the embodied. Because I could want to have sex because I don't want you to feel disappointment. I can have sex because I don't want you to get upset or your feelings hurt or have conflict. So there's the don't. It's I don't want to go to the Mexican restaurant, right? And so with that, I come into the experience disembodied,
Mm-hmm.
which can add so much of the disconnection and the dissatisfaction for both partners, and even resentment building. So the key of the I'm going to take time for me to find my experience of wanting, and it could vary for why I land in a yes. But what you're saying is the highlighting of the embodiment and taking the time to find your experience, to find the idea of the fresh food or the makeout session. I don't know that I want to go further, but I think I feel a yes for this. So now we're collaborating. And it's just like the dinner out together. All of a sudden, now the experience feels more exciting for both.
Mm-hmm. And what we've done is created a context for intimacy again here, right?
Yes.
That quite often when we are in relationships and pursuing sex, like, yes, there's the fun of like orgasm. And so much of the time, I actually just want to connect with you in an
Mm-hmm.
embodied way. And sex is one of the containers that we have for that. And it doesn't always have to look like sex. Earlier, I had said we'd used all our creative energy to not go for Mexican food.
Right.
You know, if I'm in my wanting and you're in your wanting, we can come up with some really fun stuff to do with our time that might not look like us getting in the bed for 9.5, 7.5 minutes in missionary position, which is wonderful,
Right.
right? But we might find something else or lots of else,
Right.
right? That we can still feel connected, but neither of us had to feel pressured to just take what was offered because it was offered, or say no because I don't want exactly what you're offering. Right? I don't have to say
Right.
no to you. I don't have to say no to you to going to dinner because I don't want to eat Mexican food.
Right.
Right? What do I want? Okay, maybe I don't want to be penetrated tonight, but what do I want? I do want to feel your body on top of mine. Right? Like, oh, okay, what can we do with that? There's a lot we could
Mm-hmm.
do with that. And so
That's it.
sometimes my work with folks is inviting them into this creative space. This is what when folks use the word erotic and eroticism, I invite people to consider this is that. Your embodied wanting plus creative energy, that is eroticism. I am present. And now what we do, what we build is tapped into our bodies, tapped into our senses. Now, this negotiation, if it's trading yeses, that can also be flirtation. It could be arousal. It could be a little cat and mouse, depending on what your dynamics are like. It could be a
Mm-hmm.
challenge. We can really play with this in ways that we don't automatically think of because we're taught to orient around this is a conflict. You are rejecting me. If you're clinical, then we're talking about like relationship incompatibilities or desire discrepancies and right all this term of arousal disorders and disorders of desire and all of this stuff. And
Right.
I bring it to food often just because I love food and also it's easy. Like if I'm hungry at a time that's not the time that you're hungry at, you're not going to diagnose me with something,
Right.
right? And you're not enraged. You might be disappointed that we might not eat together. And I know that it feels like the stakes are so much higher when it comes to sex, but only because we've been taught that. If I want to share an intimate experience with you, my people are Caribbean, so food is relationship, right? So
Food is
there,
sensual.
f-
It
f-
is, yes,
right?
it's
It
very
is being connected.
right.
Food is the heart of connection. Food is a welcome. Food is an apology. Food is an I love you. Food is, you know? And so I use it as an example often. But yeah, if I want to eat more than you, if I want to eat more often than you, if I want to eat at a different time than you, right? These are not crises, but we do have to negotiate something if we want to share this experience. Right? But instead, in sex, we label it. I am broken. I am ashamed. You are broken. You should feel ashamed. We need help because this is not going to work out. I have low desire. I have low arousal. I must be traumatized. And sometimes those things are true. And it has been very rare in the course of the little over a decade I've been doing this work with people that that is a good enough answer to the story.
I love that because it's so pathologizing. And you mentioned gendered earlier, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
this idea that if a woman is having low desires, I put in quote, it's as if we need to look for the trauma when we don't think of that, right? And this idea of adding creativity and collaboration and feeling your own space makes it organic. It's not, do I have desire? Do I not? It's not an on off button. Or the idea of foreplay, meaning sex is really about intercourse rather than I may want to be touched and this may be all I want in this moment in time. But now, by somebody finding the creative embodiment, it does take work sometimes, right? Especially as relationships turn long term, right? There's this place of discovering self over and over again and sharing that self
Mm-hmm.
in a collaborative, creative way that adds excitement. It moves it from the dopamine to the other reward centers of wanting and satisfaction.
Yeah, the key there is satisfaction,
Mm.
right? To be satisfied. And I know that there is a narrative around the longer we are in a relationship, the harder it is to maintain some of this. But what can also be true is that you have a viable container with which to practice this. And
Mm.
such that what that time can actually mean for folks as it continues on is you have all of these opportunities for reinvention. Think about how many selves we become in a lifetime. People are always looking for novelty and they think of that as new person, right? We become new people all the time, all the time, right? That I've been in a relationship for the last 14 years, and me 14 years ago, I can see a few different versions of self that
In so
occurred
many
during
different
that
versions of your
time.
relation in so many different versions of your
Absolutely.
relationship, right? Like
Absolutely. And so
and
these
the
are
connection.
opportunities
Yeah.
for me to learn and teach, learn and teach, learn and share,
Yeah.
right? About, oh, this is what I'm coming to want now. This is what I know now. This is what I'm learning now. This is what I'm curious about now. This is what I'm experiencing now. This is how my body responds to this now. This is, I'm stronger here, or this has changed, and this, right, continues to evolve. It continues to evolve the same way your palate changes over time, right? That all of this continues to emerge. And so I would love for anyone who's in a long term relationship to know that as you get good at these skills, your relationship keeps renewing. This continues to be rewarding. The reward doesn't run out. You just trust yourselves to be more vulnerable in pursuing your shared wants, and you get really good at it.
Wow. You get really good at it, and think, just as you're expressing it, this idea of the more robust connection in the process, because it's not a me thing. What turns me on? Yes, the embodiment is, what do I feel? What do I want? What would excite me? But there's an organism. There's a connection that becomes an us. Right now, that we're going for the Thai food, and we've connected over the excitement of the fresh and the spicy.
Mm-hmm.
You may have wanted Mexican food, but as you opened up to that, you're like, oh, yeah, that does sound really good. So there's this new shared experience, which adds to that novelty, is what I think I hear you saying.
Yeah.
That adds to the newness, the freshness.
You being in your body
Yeah.
permits and invites me to be in my body, right? So you being settled and safe in your body is an invitation to me, because we are wired for connection, right? Our nervous systems are constantly seeking co-regulation.
Mm,
And so we are picking up on each other's energy and state all of the time.
mm.
And so your sense of embodied wanting makes room for me to be in what I want. And so, in the same way that if we're talking about food again, if we were going to go out to eat and order different things, that is also possible during sex, right? That what I
Absolutely.
give does not have to be what I receive, and vice versa. What's on my menu for tonight doesn't have to be the exact same thing that is on your menu for tonight.
And it doesn't
Again,
take it away, right? Like, what you're
no.
enjoying is not necessarily taking away from my experience of what I'm having for dinner.
And our favorite
Yeah.
experiences are going to be the ones with the most yeses in them. And for the ones that have some, like, maybe, like, yes, we'll order it and it comes with mushrooms and I don't really like mushrooms. Um, there are lots of times where we're like, it's fine. I like this enough that I will eat the mushrooms as long as they're not huge. I actually love mushrooms. I like mushrooms. Right? Or I'll eat around them, or like whatever. It's fine. I want this enough that I will allow it. And we can add that level of flexibility as separate from resentment or tolerance, right? When we start with the embodied wanting. If we come in from any other vantage point, the likelihood of us gritting our teeth, chewing fast and swallowing it, plugging our nose and hoping, right? Like, we're in a disgust response, we're in an aversion, we're in an avoidance, we are in acquiescence, right? Those are all invitations to be disembodied. And so now we have these imbalanced relationships, or sometimes, I mean, I see folks all the time where, as I talk with them about sex and get curious about with them about their relationship, neither of them were there in the experience.
I think that happens a lot, right? It happens in the experience of, I just want to have an experience. I want to say that we are sexual, right? And so that this disembodied connection. And then, of course, the power of association starts to build, doesn't it? Like, if I keep having disembodied sexuality out of fear of disappointment, or just complicitly going along, I imagine it just gets harder and harder for me to find embodiment. There's more desire for me to dissociate, to disengage.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
imagine for some people, becoming embodied takes time and care. It's not always as easy as saying, find your body. For some of us that have been really taught to disengage with our body, finding embodiment can be a real challenge.
Absolutely. And if we add on the layers of our kind of current context, we
Yes.
sort of left the thread of modern life. And here's a time where I think would be good for me to name it because it's coming up for me. Our relationship to technology, and I am not anti-tech, I'm a millennial.
That's a
so
statement.
so I grew up alongside tech is a sibling of mine, and I like her. However, our relationship to this tool and how it is implemented in our lives actually complicates all of this even further because it collapses this space between desire and fulfillment, such that I actually don't even have time to be fully embodied before I'm getting the message of want this, buy now, on sale, immediately. This thread is going to expire. The sale ends, right? Flashing lights. We have always had marketing, but the way that it's implemented using the tools that are available at present, particularly social media via smartphone, we get all of these intermittent rewards that trigger dopamine releases,
So I was thinking
right?
the very the very thing that keeps us embodied is also what can disembody us if we're hitting
Yeah.
this dopamine hits over and over and over again, but we're not in tune. Is that what you're
Bec-
saying?
Absolutely, that these systems are being hijacked such that we are not embodied, but we're getting all of these triggered releases, these dopamine releases, this sense of gratification. And it is training our brains to expect immediate fulfillment,
Yeah.
right? So we become less tolerant to delay or pursuit or negotiation. We don't take the time to actually check in around
Mhm.
what we want, and so then you have packages showing up at your door every day for stuff that you didn't know existed before you saw the ad 2 days ago.
Right.
And
Right.
this speed moves us away from that practice of embodiment because we satisfy things that aren't even honest internal cravings. We've got the outside environment around us, but we haven't tuned into our inner world. And I think that we are missing something. I think there is something important about the human experience of yearning. And actually, the thing that's coming up in my brain as I say that, there's an Anderson Paak song. He's like a indie sort of pop R&B artist. Um, there's a song that goes, "I'm begging you, please come home. No one even begs anymore." Like,
Oh,
right? Like, we don't get that yearning anymore. We want, and so quickly it's gone because we're told what to want. These like second order desires. And this influences even how people pursue relationships. We online shop partners, right? I think dating apps are important to the culture because we don't meet anyone organically anymore. But this sort of like add to cart phenomenon, where I like to shop online. And so I'll browse, browse, browse. I'll put stuff in my cart and just leave it there. You start a conversation with someone and you leave it there because I wasn't actually in the mood to buy anything. I just like the feeling of browsing.
mm,
Right? That all of this, I know I've said kind of a few different things in the same place, but just to kind of add this to the soup, so to speak, that this is the water that we swim in. We're trying to get clear on what we want, and it's important for me to acknowledge that our bodies are being hijacked all the time, such that it would be so easy for me to be like, I want this, without tracking that, oh, I clicked on that thing one time and the algorithms have been feeding it to me constantly, and there's nothing actually inside that wanting,
right.
but I'm connecting to it. in this superficial way. And so the way that we work through that, with that, around that, because as you acknowledge, this is work, and it is often about unplugging. I know that's such a boring response to give in a technocracy, but unplugging from external messages to hear your own body, and again to tune into our senses. On what do I actually feel, right? Tech space is real, but it's virtual, it's digital. What is tangible that I can start with? Start with our material world and then work our way into the ether, right? So I want crunchy, I want eye contact, I want spicy and fresh, I want sandalwood, I want quiet, I want alone. Whatever it is
Right.
that comes for you, up from the body, not down from the messages, not in from society, not in response to expectations, not for any particular goal.
Hmm.
Yes, we could orient around pleasure, but sometimes we get distracted by what we think we're supposed to want or what we think we will like. And so I literally just start with people around, what do you want? What do you
Hmm.
want?
We become so conditioned sometimes now in the satisfaction, immediate satisfaction, that allowing ourselves to feel the longing feels scary or feels disheartening or feels we need to act or we're going to miss something. And that you're pointing out, I understand when you're saying, the disconnect, that just seems like such a common refrain right now, but you're really highlighting, Shadeen, how important the disconnection from the mechanical, from the dopamine hit that is being conditioned for you, into coming into, oh, wait, I have to move away from it. Is this actually something I want? Can I let myself have longing for this and continue to manifest it? And getting back to where we started, it does take work. It is so much easier to flip through your phone. That, in fact, the man who developed that said he had no idea what he was creating. The ability to flip and it rolls. That he probably wouldn't have continued had he known the dopamine rush that he was giving, that then outdoes our body and wears us out and numbs us to this very thing that you're speaking about, the idea of connecting to desire. And if we're numb, we can't find desire. And so I think your recommendation is beautiful, like slowing down and letting yourself, like, experiencing the longing.
Yeah. Right? This experience of being in the wanting is
Yeah,
so meaningful
so
for
much so.
our sense of connection to self, for clarity around what matters to us, what we value. And I mean, if nothing else, it's good for our art. Longing, desire, eroticism, this wanting and claiming my own body is so meaningful for whatever world it is that we're trying to build. I think of activists and scholars like Audre Lorde, whose work invites us to consider that there is a radical potential in reclaiming your desire as an essential source of knowledge, right? With the
Right.
belief that our pleasure is a liberatory force, that our ability to know what we want gives us the ability to say no
Mm.
to what is not right for us on our path. And knowing that we are in a time where many people's rights are being contested, where many people's safety is being challenged, where many people are feeling scared and overwhelmed and uncertain or disheartened at all of the division. What would happen if we were to not only play into the chaos of it all and react to all of the movements that are happening around us? What if we could still stay grounded to the earth by connecting to our bodies in real time and say, well, what do I want? Not out there, not for the future, not for from some theoretical framework. What do I want? And those are usually really good places to start when people are saying, I'm overwhelmed. What can I do?
Yeah.
It's repetitive, but it's clear, right? My clients are coming in saying, what do I do? And I say, well, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want? And usually the want itself is pretty straightforward. The want itself is pretty, air quotes, simple. And starting from there at the level of your body in this moment in time is actionable. And so while it is effort, it is also usually less work than all the other things we can get up to and into. Right? No, you don't have to build your own school. What if you just want to sit next to someone who says, yeah, this is hard?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you do want to build a school. I don't know.
But you're asking the question from a deeply embodied place. I know we keep
Mhm.
coming back to that, but we can't, I mean, obviously we can't, that's the core of this, right? Especially when we think of those whose rights, the marginalized experience right now being the rights are so in threat, and we are so called to be in our protective shutdown self, which leaves us limited access to the wanting, to the
Mhm.
ability to get in a connection with self. So it's what I hear you saying. I think that's that part where you speak about the intersection between sexual awareness and social justice. I wanted to bring that in a little bit. I know we need to wrap, but I mean, it
Yeah.
feels like we're just, you have such important things to say. And
Hmm. One of the ways that we can use this relationship to desire as a potentially liberating force. I can never claim anything, as being liberation in and of itself, liberation being freedom from oppression. I do not know what will free people, but at the very least, I would love for people to have sovereignty over their own bodies. And
Mhm.
what is more sovereign than wanting? Embodied wanting. And
Mhm.
so as we come into relationship with folks where we differ in our positions, where we differ in our access to resources, in our safety, in our material privileges like money or housing, one of the ways that we can extend this beyond just my body is for me to be deeply curious about what you want.
Mm.
So folks are saying, how do we do right by indigenous people? How do we what do we start doing all this stuff? Well, what are they saying they want?
Mhm.
What do they want? Usually it's pretty clear, like land back, right? And so we don't actually have to get all complicated and do a million studies to figure it out. It really is as simple as a question, what do you want? And then we find the ways in which that can be materialized. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What comes up for me in that as I'm in my body? That doesn't make it an easy space to be in, but it is an honest negotiation, one that has room for intimacy where I honor your personhood as a person also. I am not participating in a hierarchy by institutionalizing or implementing some external thing, thought, force. It also leaves room for this to evolve over time. I believe that we can come to want things based on the context. So
Mhm.
I'm not holding you to whatever it was before. What do you want? As I enter into conversation to you today, what do you want to get out of
Mhm.
this? I mean, it's some of how you and I entered this call, right? I
Yeah.
deeply appreciated your invitation around what would feel good to you to talk about. What do you want to talk about? And I asked you the same. And now,
Right.
and here we are having a really enjoyable conversation.
I wished I had hit the record, is because that was a really beautiful conversation, and we came into it together, and it was a wonderful experience to start with. And it is, when you bring it back to liberation and the connection to one's embodiment, it is so powerful. I think about how often policy is developed and disseminated out of fear. And
Mm-hmm.
again, we can't have embodiment when we're in fear. And so people who are developing policies that are limiting access and the rights for other individuals, it'd be interesting. What is it that you want, and how often the experience is going to be about what they don't want, and the fear rather than the embodiment. And it's so much more challenging to be asked, what is it you want? That is not selfish. It is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you open to coming into the space in an authentic way by stepping into the question of, what do you want? What do we want in this
Mm-hmm.
relationship together that we've newly formed?
Yeah, systemic oppression shapes what we are allowed to want,
Yes.
right? Because they, right, systems that are
Mm,
seeking to oppress, right, want to maintain this hierarchy of power over. And it is much harder to have power over if I am very clear on what I experience in this world. And one of the ways we can stay clear is by tuning into our wanting. It is not the
mm,
only way, it's a way that I really enjoy and applies to so many places, right? That instead of being told what we get to want, what we should want, we have the agency to consent and to negotiate and to think about pleasure and explore and be curious and play and
yes.
experience creativity. And so, this is, yes, a tool for survival, but also a tool of resilience, a tool of resistance. And so, I'm really glad that we got to enter into this part of the conversation because, again, this is also the heart place that my work comes from. I want folks to have access to this as a tool that we have been gifted, right?
Right.
That whatever sort of you believe in, biology, spirit, divine, this is how we are wired. This is what bodies do at baseline. If anyone's ever met a child before, children want.
They want big.
They want, and we have
Yes.
to teach them to be ashamed. We have to teach them to be afraid. We have to teach them to suppress and deny. We have to teach them to lie and manipulate and exploit. None of that is organic material. We learn how to do all of that. But we come in seeking connection and wanting it, deeply wanting it. And so, for anyone who says that, like, I just don't have desires, your body's still offering it for you. And I hope that you find permission and support to tap back in. And for everyone who's out here, you know, trying to live a life that feels good and right and purposeful, I wish you a journey that allows you enough space and clarity for you to not only get clear on what you want, but to pursue it.
Mm, I'm just sitting with that.
Mm.
I'm really just sitting with that. It's such a joy to have you on the show. And what you have brought to our listeners is immeasurable. And I feel a lot of gratitude and wanting of more. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you guys for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And please take the time to pass it on to somebody you know that could use this message today. And take a moment to rate and review us. And all of the contact information for Shadeen will be on our show notes. How might they reach you if you're open to that? If somebody wanted to reach out to you directly?
Yeah, I am Shadeen Francis everywhere. So if you are looking for me, if you type in my name, you will find me through my website. If you are a social media human, you will find me on Instagram, or you can email me at hello@shadeenfrancis.com.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us today. Take a moment, rate and review us. It helps people find us. And till next time, we'll see you around the bend.